where you can talk to real live atheists here on Tan Talk 1340. That's right, it is the voice of atheism in Florida from the Atheists of Florida here on the Tan Talk Radio Network, where today we're going to talk about some of the issues that are going to affect us through the state of Florida's legislature and their efforts to impose the kind of laws that we think really never should even be brought to the table in the first place, much less considered to be laws. But we'll see what they are and what they're all about today here on the Tan Talk Network. We invite your call at 441-3000. We'd love to hear from you if you'd like to comment on any of them. Ed Golly with Jim Peterson, Judy Adkins. Our guest today from the ACLU, who's the staff attorney for it, is Jackie Azis. Jackie, thanks for coming over today. Tell us a little bit about the ACLU and what you do for them very quickly.
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. The ACLU of Florida is an affiliate associated with the National American Civil Liberties Union. We have affiliates all throughout the country and multiple in some states. And here in Florida, we work on many issues. I'm a staff attorney. I concentrate mostly on criminal justice and also work in First Amendment issues as they come, including free speech and, of course, the Establishment Clause. And some of the issues that the ACLU works on nationwide and here in Florida include criminal justice, racial justice, First Amendment, immigrants' rights, LGBT, privacy. I could go on.
Okay. And tell us a little about your background. How'd you get mixed up with the ACLU?
Sure. I worked with the ACLU during my time in law school, both at the ACLU of North Carolina and the ACLU Capital Punishment Project, which was in Durham, North Carolina. And because I went to the University of Florida and studied journalism there, I had an appreciation for the First Amendment, of course. I also I've come from a family with different backgrounds. My mother's an immigrant. My parents were of different religions. So it's always been something that's important to me that we appreciate the differences in people and we celebrate the differences instead of trying to push beliefs on others to make people believe what we believe or act how we act.
After 2 years, do you think the President of the United States, in your opinion, has ever actually read the First Amendment or has any idea what it means? You don't need to answer that. We want to talk about, before we get started, an event that's coming up very soon here in the Tampa Bay area that might be of interest to the kind of people who might listen to this program. Jimmy, tell us about it quickly, please.
Coming up, we have Darwin Day 2019. Ooh. And it means it's an opportunity to evolve. And it doesn't mean you have to grow another head or anything. It just means that you'll be exposed to people who can inform large numbers of people about big changes that are happening in our society and what they mean for you. The general theme for this year is that we're going to examine the growth of atheism and non-religion. I think it will have interesting implications for activism at all levels of all kinds. And that will be, that particular segment will be given by Ryan Cragen. He's a professor at the University of Tampa and one of the most popular speakers we have had previously. Also, we're having Hemant Mehta, who is also known as the Friendly Atheist. He's friendly, he's nice, he'll be kind. But he's going to talk about something related to that, which is atheists in politics today and tomorrow. He'll talk about the fact that there are far more open atheists in public office than many people think. And he also wants to talk about how they got elected, why their atheism matters, and what we can learn from them. And all this you can experience March 16th at 10 a.m. at the UUC Octagon, 2470 Nursery Road in Clearwater. Cost is $20 a person, and you can go online at Brown Paper Ticket to purchase the ticket, or you can pay at the door. So we hope we'll see you there, and it will be a highly rewarding session.
Atheist Forum here on the Tan Talk Radio Network, and Judy Adkins, let's get started with some of these bills that are being proposed in the state legislature this year and why we are very concerned about them.
Okay. Of the almost 3,000 bills that have been proposed this year, We have about 15, of which we're mainly focused. And it's not, all of them are not that we oppose them. It's just that we feel interested in them and concerned about them. Such as the one that we don't oppose, but actually kind of support, is the ban of conversion therapy for young people. We don't think that young people should be subjected to that kind of intrusion into their life or into that kind of pseudoscience nonsense. But as I said, most of them are bills that concern the intrusion of religion into public life.
Well, backing up a second, didn't Mike Pence, who's now the vice president of this country, want to implement that in Indiana when he was the governor?
Yes, he did.
And did he want that to be mandated?
I don't know that for sure.
Or just
but,
did he want the state to offer it, or jail people who didn't do it? I mean,
I can't speak to what he offered in Indiana. I know that he was a supporter and probably still is a supporter of conversion therapy. Interestingly enough, because this is since our ACLU person is here today, Tampa, Florida implemented a ban on conversion therapy, and they were sued by a church for freedom of speech, that they could not ban that therapy because it was an intrusion on their right to free speech.
Was that the city or county?
It was the city. So I don't know if you know anything about that situation, Jackie, but that was an interesting take, I thought, on their forcing conversion therapy on people.
Right. That is the main reason that people are against these types of bills, because of First Amendment reasons. I've also heard that people believe it should be left to, instead of the legislator, it should be left to the profession to discipline people who partake in this type of therapy, which has, as you mentioned, all medical communities that are relevant have determined it is harmful, it's dangerous. And those are, people in medicine, people in mental health care, people in human services uniformly recognize that it's been a discredited practice.
Right. And I feel torn, because I think if you're an adult, you have a right to subject yourself to any kind of nonsense you basically want to subject yourself to. But as a young person, an adolescent, they should never be forced into this kind of self-hatred. It's basically what it is, in my opinion. And interestingly enough, the founder of the conversion therapy movement came out as gay not too long ago.
Oh, darn. I'd go a step further and say no minor should be subjected to any religious training whatsoever. But I guess that we're a long way from that.
Yes, we are a long way from that. So of the, I don't know what all ACLU is following this year. I know we have some overlap from what our brief discussion was. So I don't know where you would like to start with.
Sure, we can
addressing.
Start. Yeah, with the conversion therapy one specifically, we are following this bill. Our board is currently working on how we, as the ACLU, are going to come out on it. Basically, we're trying to come up with our policy about this, so we can take a stance one way or the other. We are following it, though, closely. Of course, at the ACLU, and this is no secret to anyone, we firmly support LGBT communities, and they should be able to live their life without this forced, what they're claiming is to be a medical treatment when we know it's harmful and it's not. And so,
it's not even a medical condition.
Right.
I mean, it's not a mental illness.
And we want to make sure that LGBTQ people are safe and that they're supported and that they're valued for who they are. Yeah. And we know conversion therapy is not doing any of that.
Right. And we have the same approach here at Atheists of Florida.
So stay tuned for official policy.
Okay. We'll be looking forward to
that one.
Those who offer conversion therapy sometimes claim that what they're doing is a matter of free speech. In other words, their therapy is conversation, talk therapy. And to restrict their ability to talk to their patients or clients is something that would be unconstitutional. How would you handle that?
The problem is that, free speech doesn't mean you get to say whatever you want. There are
Exactly.
restrictions on free speech, and there are different standards depending on the classification. For instance, strict scrutiny could be required. And so then the question would be, could this be upheld under a strict scrutiny standard? And I think that's going to be the problem for those people who are saying, oh, no, this is protected speech. Will it survive strict scrutiny analysis under the courts?
And could you explain what that is?
Strict scrutiny?
Yes.
Sure. Con
Sorry.
law class 101. Basically, does the government have an interest in protecting this? And is this narrowly tailored to serve that interest? And it can't be just any interest. It has to be a compelling interest is the constitutional standard for that. So is the law that the government has created narrowly tailored enough for a compelling interest in which the government has? And so that's going to be a problem, I think, for this. But we'll see. As you said, there's already been one case. I'm sure that'll be appealed here locally, and we'll see how that goes.
Let's move on to the marriage equality issue. That's there's apparently a bill in the Senate and the House.
Well, that's a more of a housekeeping kind of bill where the Constitution of Florida will be adjusted to reflect marriage equality,
which was
ruled
by the federal
yes,
courts to apply
right.
to all states.
And we obviously support that change. Now, one interesting thing, and maybe you could address this, is under the teaching of health and HIV, they have a thing in there that a statement, I should say, in the law that says that teachers must promote abstinence and must promote that the norm is for a monogamous heterosexual marriage. Now, would that have to be removed if this marriage equality goes through?
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay. When they're teaching health,
Right.
when a teacher is teaching the
Right.
health class
Right.
about HIV contraction and how to prevent it, they are required to tell students that abstinence is the only sure way to prevent HIV.
They're required.
They're required.
Wow.
And that the norm for society is for a monogamous heterosexual marriage.
That sounds problematic, yes.
Okay. So most likely, if this marriage equality thing goes through, which was on the slate last year and didn't get through, then that would have to be modified.
I would think so.
I would think
that
so
be
too,
part of
but
it.
I just wanted to check with you.
Right.
Okay, let me get over here to my list. Oh, Ed, go ahead.
No, I was going to say probably the one that would concern us most as atheists would be the next one we want to talk about, which is the study of Bible and religion in the public school system.
Right.
Requiring each school district to offer specified courses relating to religion, Hebrew scriptures, and Bible to certain students as elective courses, and providing course requirements. We see this as just another way to bypass the traditional wall of state-church separation, and really use the public school system as a vehicle to teach students that it's perfectly normal and rational to accept religious beliefs, and then that's going to be directed more specifically to the Christian belief.
Well, yeah, my concern with this bill is twofold. One is that it focuses on the Bible. So they're not talking about teaching people about the Quran or the Torah or any other religious book, the Book of Scientology or the Book of Mormon, just the Bible. And the second concern I have is I think it's Nebraska. They're moving to make this a required course in their schools. And even though this is set up this year as an elective course, my concern is next year it's going to come in and be a required course. And while we support teaching religion, comparative religion in public schools, it has to be done in such a manner that that is a true comparison of religion and not just promoting. And
Yeah.
who's going to monitor this? And I just all kinds of trouble with this particular bill.
My understanding of the bill actually is that right now it is a requirement. It says the district school board shall install in the public schools a secular program of education. And then it gives two options. This is the latest version that I found. The first option is an objective study of religion. And then the second one is the objective study of the Bible, including but not limited to, and this was the concern you talked about, the
Right.
Hebrew scripture of the Old Testament and on the New Testament. And exactly the problems that you presented is this is not like a world religions class.
Right.
The first option could potentially be that, but that second option that schools would offer is not a world religions, class.
It's a
It's just
Christian.
concentrating, right,
Yes.
on the Hebrew scripture and then the New Testament in a Christian version.
Just one clarification. I haven't read the latest version of the bill, but it was required to be offered as an elective. And my
Right.
concern
I see.
that next year they're going to require it of everyone, and it's no longer an elective.
Right. That's right. Okay. That would be especially problematic
Yeah.
as well.
And it would be another problem in maintaining the objective character that they, objective and secular character to this course of studies that they claim to want to install. The problem is, of course, that different school districts will have, shall we say, little less dedication to the
Right.
notion of objectivity when it comes to matters of religion than one might hope. We, being atheists, think that it is very valuable for a person to understand and know everything as much as they can about religion and the role it plays in how we got here as Americans, as human beings. But that it should be concrete, scientifically based knowledge, not advocacy for some sort of particular religious perspective.
Absolutely. And I do not see this, if it's implemented, becoming that objective class that we would hope. It
Well,
would be nearly impossible, I think, for that to
We
actually
all-
happen.
I'm sorry. We already know in Pinellas they have a church running their
Wow.
sex education classes and offering character development and all those kinds of things. A fundamentalist church that's very anti-choice. So if they're going to bring in those kinds of people to teach the Bible, there's just no
Sure.
limit to what
And
they would be able to do.
One of the sponsors of the bill made it very clear
Oh yes,
that
Right.
favorite
this is the
congressperson.
correct
Yes,
and exclusive means to salvation is the
Yes.
Bible. So how is that course going to be steered to satisfy his designs on it? It's
I
clear
thought you were
that-
talking about her.
Yeah,
Kim
Oh, no, you're talking about
Daniels.
Davis? No, it's the fellow from
Yeah.
Ocala who's
Yeah,
one of the
right.
sponsors.
Well, no, she's the one who introduced it, Kim Daniels.
Yeah, but he's one of
He's
the
sponsors. Yes.
And so his intent is very clear.
Yes.
It's not to be
And
an
so is
impartial.
hers.
Yeah, of course it is. Which goes hand in hand with the voucher program that
Right.
the governor wants to expand on, and of course Betsy DeVos's designs on completely dismantling the public school system and turning it all over to the churches.
Yes.
Which we're going to talk about a little bit later also. But all of it seems to collectively work toward using the schools to turn our country into a theocracy, which is why I go back to the First Amendment. Have these people ever read it? Do they understand what it means? Do they have any respect for it? And
Well,
will the
I mean-
ACLU come to the rescue when they start doing this stuff?
If this passes, we will be monitoring how it is implemented in the schools, because I think it will be extremely difficult for this to be implemented in an objective fashion. And
Well, it's already in the schools, as the schools can offer it now
As an elected.
as an elective,
Mhm.
but it's not required of each school to do it. This law, the only thing it modifies it a little bit, but the only thing it really does is put it in that each school is required to offer this.
so we'll have
course.
more schools.
So we'll
that
have
are doing-
more schools, and the northern Florida counties where it's very conservative, very religious, and it will be problematic. I tried to monitor the sex education classes here in Pinellas County, and they wanted $1,600. They do not waive the fee for anyone on freedom of information requests. So they're going to make it impossible for poor groups like us to be able to monitor it. So we'll have to go to rich groups like ACLU.
We'll talk. Let me know.
You're listening to the Atheist Forum on the Tan Talk Radio Network, the most interesting program on the network. In studio with us today is Jacqueline Azis, who's the staff attorney for the ACLU Florida over in the Tampa area. It was nice of to come visit us in the studio today, talk
Thank
about
you.
some of the legislation that may be moving its way through the session this year. We invite your questions, comments, or insults at 441-3000. We'll take a short break and tell you a little bit about Atheists of Florida, and then we're going to continue some of the bills that concern funding for specifically religious organizations and how they want to get your tax dollars for their religious institutions, how devious they are in trying to do this, and how the ACLU is going to come to the rescue. We'll be right back. Atheists of Florida is a nonprofit membership organization founded in 1992. For over 25 years, Atheists of Florida has brought atheists together to address state-church separation issues, provide legal assistance in cases of religious discrimination in employment or educational institutions, help atheists meet others who want to live their lives free of religion, and produce the Atheist Forum. For membership information, visit our website at atheistsoflorida.com, where you'll find our newsletters, annual reports, statement of purpose, and information about meetings and events. That's atheistsoflorida.com.
They're not requiring it in the schools. You're right. They're not requiring it for
We're
students.
back on the forum, and I want to quote Governor DeSantis with respect to his issues on the voucher program. We first saw him coming in as a champion of the environment, only now to start turning away from what really would be, I think you would say, a very literal interpretation of our state constitution with respect to funding of public schools and expanding on what Governor Bush started with the voucher program. He says, quote, "If the taxpayer is paying for education, it's public education." Here's what our Constitution says about it in Florida. "The education of children is a fundamental value of the people of the state of Florida. It is, therefore, a paramount duty of the state to make adequate provision for the education of all children residing within its borders. Adequate provision shall be made by law for a uniform, efficient, safe, secure, and high-quality system of free public schools." Well, I think it's pretty obvious to all of us that what the governor, in fact, is trying to do is define private schools as public schools
Right.
because they're getting funding from the taxpayers. The argument of the taxpayer is that if I've got to pay for schools, I should be able to choose what schools my kids go to. We're a little bit torn, I think, as when we talk among each other, is whether this really is an effort to, again, theocratize education, giving the whole really the entire state education system a way to challenge science and evolution, or is it really an effort to bypass the desegregation of the schools, because the private schools have the ability to choose, pick and choose their students, so that middle class students can go to school with middle class kids that of same race and so on, and it's sort of what we're calling these days a dog whistle effort to allow segregation to happen again, entirely funded by the taxpayers. I don't know if you have an opinion about that, or if you think it's either or both, but I'm sure you wouldn't disagree that it's a very concentrated effort by the religious right and the conservatives in this country to convert our public education system into a private and religious and segregated education system paid for by the taxpayer.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
absolutely. What these voucher programs do is they take the money from the public schools and they go to generally religious schools. And so these are public funds that are being used for religious means. So when they say school choice, what they really mean is you get a choice to go to a religious school.
Right.
And so it's a choice for someone who wants a religious education and not a secular education. And so it's for people who believe in whatever that specific religion is that's being taught at that school. Those are the people who get the choice. it's not really a choice for people like atheists to go and take this voucher money and go to a private religious school.
Yeah, about 70%, I believe, somewhere around there is of the private schools in Florida are religious. And it's not just the vouchers, because now they're still trying to get rid of science in the science classes and force people into teaching the controversy, they call it, which.
And aren't new textbooks being considered now for the schools? So that
and they have to. They've got a bill that requires them to teach the controversy in the textbooks, even that the textbooks have to address the controversy in a respectful manner.
This is a really huge. It's a great threat to any semblance that we have of separation of church and state.
Yes.
It sounds as if the governor's characterization was based on the slipperiest of slopes in terms of how changing the nature of what we consider to be public education, in contrast to, in contrast to the rather more strict constitutional interpretation of what we call education. So, how can we? What is going to be our approach? The approach of the more rational thinking of our citizenry, in terms of what to do about this situation. It's been building for years now. The basement has been laid for even more dramatic changes in the future, ones that will continue to threaten our First Amendment rights.
You know, what I remember most is that when Jeb Bush lost in the state Supreme Court over the voucher issue, his reaction was, we're going to continue the approach pending the appeal, the outcome of the appeal. In other words, he has no respect for law and the courts when he wants to shove his agenda down everybody's throat. And it's been that way ever since. We're just going to impose this without regard to what the Constitution says.
I think a lot of this is that they try to push it as far as they can, and then they're like, well, if someone wants to challenge us, we'll see you, and see what the state Supreme Court does. And they want to get away with it as long as they can in many of these instances.
Oh, and just a little reminder here: the state Supreme Court has recently had 2 new justices appointed, both of them held to be extreme conservatives, and who are likely to favor the governor's approach to this question.
Yeah, the two that were appointed, I read just today, I think, signed the support of school choice. Back a few years ago, they were very much in favor of offering school choice.
We've always had school choice. Right?
Yes.
If you want to send your child to a special school, you pay for it.
Right.
But I think what they try to take the public's eye off the ball, in that the state has the responsibility to provide the schools the same way as it is supposed to protect the environment, provide good roads, all kind, these things that the government is supposed to provide, and that's what our tax dollars go to. So if you want to send your child to a special school, you have the choice to do it, but you've got to pay for it. And that's what they want to get away from. They want
but then they argue that poor people can't afford to send theirs, so why should only rich people be able to do it, and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, same ones.
Yeah.
Sure.
So go ahead.
Well, that's all right. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to move on to some of the appropriation bills that
let's do it.
Have been suggested this year, and some of the most. I feel very torn about the 2 bills that were put forth to secure funding for Jewish schools. I understand that the Jewish community is in a very special kind of place, but our tax dollars cannot go to fund any religious school. And I don't know what what the ACLU is on this.
So our position, and actually I think this bill was brought up or mentioned last year, and we had the same position then and we maintain it now, that we understand the importance for security in schools, but any money that's given to a school, it needs to be to all religions or to no religious
Right.
schools. So it shouldn't just be, this is only for Jewish schools. It needs to be, this is for any school that has a legitimate security concern, religious, non-religious. And it needs to be a legitimate security concern. It can't be like, oh, our parking lot needs to be resurfaced. And that's another concern that comes in terms of how they create this bill. Is it going to be used for real security reasons? Saying that, I do have to say, we don't believe in over-policing in schools. We don't believe in all of that. So there's some hesitancy there with how they will use this money.
But I mean, to me, the line is if it's a religious school, it should not be getting state money,
Right.
period. I don't care what it's being used for. And I agree that, there are situations where safety is a concern, especially in minority communities like the Jewish community or the Islamic community. I'm sure if somebody put forth a bill wanting to protect, I can't remember, madrasas, that there would be an outrage about state money going to support a religious school. We have this whole romantic thing with Israel going on right now. And so that's why I think this is making some progress.
And it is part of the overall concern, that money that is for public education.
Yes.
The same with the vouchers is being sent to
Sure,
religious
and aren't
schools.
they trying to nudge the ball forward by asking for public money to rebuild some of the damaged religious facilities
Yes.
up in the
And
hurricane?
FEMA has ordered that was okay.
Yeah, right.
So we would not have any objection, I think, if there was a program to protect children. In other words, children in schools, coming or going from schools or whatever. If that program was applied by a state agency or county or city, whatever it takes, and it was administered by them for the protection of children per se, but not necessarily going to the school to administer or provide in any way. At the same time, there are situations which are a bit more debatable, and that is the historical nature of church buildings, that sort of thing. If Chartres Cathedral were falling down, we would like to see that it stays repaired. I mean, we don't necessarily subscribe to the religious viewpoints of those who built it, but nevertheless, it has become a significant cultural monument, and as such, it deserves protection. And the same is true for other religious facilities, just based on their status as a historical monument. But we don't provide money for them to increase their congregations or buy new hymnals or what have you. That's would be wrong.
Well, and there are actually several bills right now, and that would allocate money to the Mount Vernon Missionary Baptist Church building expansion. I have not gone in and read this just got added, so I have not gone in and read the actual request that they put in for appropriation as to what that would do, but that seems completely inappropriate. Why should we be adding building expansion to a church?
Especially if the people who are the parishioners of the church donate money, they get a tax deduction for that, don't they?
Yeah. And then there's another one, and I have to go because I messed up my thing. I got the wrong thing there. Rats.
I do just want to add for that the bill
Good place to jump in.
Yeah,
while she's-
Yes.
right, for the security. But when we're saying like it needs to be for security, what we mean is credible threats of violence, not the buildings falling or whatever. These types of bills are obviously problematic because it allows the government to get away with it in terms of it's under the guise of, it's not for religious indoctrination, it's for maintenance. And that is how they are getting away with this.
Yeah.
In these types of proposed bills. And they're saying it's open to any religious facility that's asking for it.
But it's still public money for religious purposes.
Right.
Yeah, and there is another one that I can't seem to get up here right now, providing money for a parking lot maintenance in a church. I have to go. Sorry,
So
I
do the
got
same
the thing.
thing.
But that's and then there's an appropriation for the Greater Mercenary Greater Mercy Missionary Baptist Church Safe Day. And I looked into that, and it's for their Halloween alternative celebration. Now, why would we give $150,000 for them to have an alternative to Halloween at a church? That just does not make any sense to me. It's HB 3127.
Well, of course, as is frequently the case, though, a lot of these bills are turned in by legislators trying to cultivate the favorable interest of their constituents. So they will put in anything in the legislative hopper, and most of it's not going to pass. But at least the legislators will be able to tell their people that, no, I tried. So we have to keep that.
I think that's spot on for some of these.
Yeah. Well, there's the Justice to Jesus bill that gets filed every year to reimburse this man for his trouble that he's had with the legislature. And now this year he's taken a new tack to offer a course in civics and consumerism. So I'll be interested to see if that goes anywhere. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to back up a little bit because you said 2 judges had been appointed by DeSantis, but actually it's 3. And 3 of those judges were mixed up in the 2006 decision on the opportunity scholarships, right?
Yes, that's it.
So they have been replaced by DeSantis. And of course, they're probably going to rule quite opposite of what the judges that have been replaced ruled on that.
Right.
So it's the situation's getting more urgent. But that
really
means that
is.
even when you have the Constitution on your side and you take a good fight to the court, if the judges are biased, you're not going to win because the interpretation is what the judge says it is, no matter how literally one can read it. In case you have joined us in the middle of the program, it's the Atheist Forum on the Tan Talk Radio Network, and we want to take just a moment to tell you about an event briefly that will be happening next month that would be of interest to those who live their lives free of the nightmare of superstition. Jim?
And that event is Darwin Day.
Yes.
Your opportunity to grow. And in this particular case, we're going to have a special guest, Dr. Ryan Cragen of the University of Tampa, and Hemant Mehta, who is a national figure who is called the Friendly Atheist. He has had a blog for some 15 years, and he is widely recognized for his knowledge. And surprise, surprise, we're going to talk about atheism and what it means to you. We think that even if you're not an atheist, it would be worth your while to know something about it, because atheism occupies a larger and larger presence in today's society, especially among younger people. So we need to find out what it is and what it means, what is going to happen. March 16th is the day at 10 a.m. at the UUC Octagon on Nursery Road in Clearwater. $20 is the admission cost at the door or online at brownpaperticket.com. So we hope we'll see you there. I'll be there. More excitement than you can stand. All right.
I could get through it. Anyway, we're talking about some of the prospective legislation that may be dealt with that we think seriously challenges the state church separation foundation of our state and federal constitutions. Judy?
Yeah, and it's really difficult. Like I said, there's almost 3,000 bills filed this year, and you go through and you try to search for things and everything. And so really, I think I'm just getting the top of the iceberg. I have that fear anyway, because sometimes they use things like balanced when they really are trying to promote something. The last bill I was talking about was the Holy Family Church Parking and Drainage Bill, which allocates $492,730 for parking and drainage at this church. It seems to me, and I don't know because I've done this for a few years, but in terms of searching bills, but it seems to me they're getting more brazen about giving taxpayer money away to churches directly.
The way I think of this is, would we give that kind of money to any other private entity?
Yeah, really.
And I don't think we would.
I don't think we would either.
Would there be a bill, let's say, okay, the Shell station on 14th and 8th Street in random city X, we need to donate this money for drainage or whatever, and that on that property. Would we do that? I don't think we would.
And
Yeah.
what about minority religions? What if it's a Muslim
Right.
mosque or something that is not a religion common to our culture? Are they going to go ahead and dole that money out to them also? Not as likely, is it?
Not as likely. And here's another one, HB 3449. Provides an appropriation for the Lima Center at St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church. It's $900,000. I don't know what that's for. I don't know what I've Googled it. I can't find anything except that it's a Catholic church.
Well, if they get it, it'll be a miracle.
And then there's a couple of things that, like the Salvation Army. I know that they provide rehab services and things, but I really, because of their anti-gay stance and because they require people to go to religious services, that seems completely inappropriate. And the Livingstone's Cove Learning Academy is $305,000 to this school that's run by a church, even though they don't. It's for children of incarcerated people, but which I'm sure is very needed, but the state should be providing that. And then there's another sports program at the Jesus Christ Archangels Liberty Square program, which is in Miami. Maybe you're familiar with that group, but no. It's for $1,275,000. So, it's like we're not talking pocket change here. We're talking big money going to these religious institutions, when our Constitution, the Florida Constitution, says tax money cannot be diverted to any secular organization.
Right.
Well, maybe that's the thing we should talk about. How do we view religion properly in the context of the parameters established by the Constitution itself? What is religion, and why does it enjoy a special and protected status along with speech, assembly, and so forth?
I think that's a very philosophical question that we could just have a whole nother talk on. And I think also religion's very personal
Exactly.
to some people, and some people's religion may not be reflected in any of these major religious institutions. It may be something extremely personal to them.
Exactly.
And why it receives special protection, I think that would take a whole other session. But
There's a commonality between
Right.
religion and speech and all these other matters, and that is that it is in all cases unique to the individual. Freedom of religion is not the freedom of the state to govern religion, and it is not anything other than the individual who has freedom of religion. So for the state to intervene and favor one religion over others, or any religion at all, is well outside the secular nature that the founders decided that they wanted to establish. They had seen all of the tremendous religious conflicts in Europe prior to the American Revolution, and they decided they would like to see a country that would be free of those conflicts. So that's why freedom of religion, as opposed to freedom for religion to run amok over the landscape, is the most important thing. And we have...
You heard about the 11-year-old student over in Lakeland
Oh, yes.
who refused to stand for the
Yes.
pledge
absolutely.
and ended up being charged with a misdemeanor. It appears that was because he got into an argument with the teacher or the resource officer or whatever. But certainly I would think the ACLU would back anybody's right to refuse to engage in a pledge, what we call a prayer of allegiance, because of the inclusion of the in God or under God rather phraseology that was not originally involved in it.
Absolutely. You may have heard the good news. The state attorney said they're not pursuing the
Oh,
case.
okay.
good.
And,
I
which
didn't-
is excellent. And I mean, he never should have been arrested anyways. This just goes to the problem with policing in schools. But absolutely. And the child was right in terms of what he was saying about the pledge is racist, and so is the national anthem.
Yeah. The thing that concerned me was that the substitute teacher did not know that the student had a right not to stand for the pledge.
Probably because everybody does it by rote. It never becomes an issue. I think we have a caller that wants to talk to you, Jackie.
Great.
Unless it's a shill, go ahead. Thanks for calling the Atheist Forum on the Tan Talk Radio Network. Hello.
No caller.
There? No?
And
Okay.
Is anybody there?
Knowledgeable.
Oh,
yeah.
there he is. Hello.
All right. Start over again.
Can you hear me?
Barely.
wake up a little.
Okay.
There you
I just
go.
wanted to tell you folks that it's another excellent broadcast, as usual, informed and enlightening. And speaking about enlightening, is your guest going to announce the Greater Tampa chapter of ACLU annual meeting on March 2nd?
We are going to discuss that briefly.
Thank you. Now I'll get back to listening. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Farkle.
All right. You have the floor,
Very
Jackie. Okay.
Go ahead and make the announcement now. It
Absolutely.
seems like a good time.
And this is actually different than I think the event you all
Yeah.
were mentioning earlier, but there are chapters throughout the entire state of Florida, but specifically the Greater Tampa chapter has a meeting on March 2nd. There will be numerous special guests, including staff attorney Amia Kaku, who's our immigration attorney. He'll be speaking. Our new executive director, who replaced Howard Simon, and our new executive director is Micah Kubik. He'll be there. And it's all day on Saturday. I believe it's at Stetson Law. And if you give me a minute, I'll get you more details and specifics if you want to go ahead and talk about the other event.
We've got about 5 minutes left, but yeah, I don't know if you want to bring up any more of the any final issues that you want to talk about this week.
There are a number of abortion laws, but I don't think
it's
we have
too
enough
late.
time to
Right.
get into that right now because that's just. Although I don't know if you saw the latest news that Trump has now said that any group that does abortion referrals will no longer get money for birth control distribution.
Well, I didn't see that. Wow.
Yeah, it just came out a few minutes ago. So
If I could circle back to the event because I got the
Yes,
location
go
wrong.
ahead.
So it is March 2nd, 2019. It's from 10:30 to 2 p.m. And it's going to be downtown Tampa Law Center is the location, which is 1700 North Tampa Street in the Smith Courtroom.
And along with that opportunity, there's another one. The Pinellas County chapter of the ACLU is having its annual dinner at which the Gardner Beckett Civil Liberties Award will be bestowed on Howard Simon, the former executive director of the ACLU, a very esteemed person, and he will give a brief address to the audience, and that will be most enlightening to be sure. But you also get dinner on top of that too. It's the annual dinner, and tickets are $50.
Whoa.
But it goes to support the ACLU, and the work of the ACLU is a powerful constraint on forces in this country that would have us be much more like a backwater dictatorship. And we know all about that, so we won't go into it, but you could help. And it's only $50, and you get a fine dinner and a great speaker.
And on top of that, in March, we will be doing an invocation for Clearwater, the City Commission, the Atheists of Florida. So I wanted to, if anybody's interested in that, I unfortunately don't remember the date. I think it's March 7th, but I could be wrong. I need to get that information.
Well, we did
We'll
one
present it later.
a couple of weeks ago for the Largo City
Right.
Commission. So next week, why don't we bring in the text of that and read it
we
in
can
case
do
our
that.
listeners want
Yeah.
to know what an atheist invocation sounds
We can
like.
have the person who presented it
Yes.
read the text.
Okay. So Jackie, we're getting near the end of the program, and I'd like to turn it over to you to tell us anything you'd like to about the ACLU or anything that you're concerned about that we haven't looked at today.
Absolutely. The pledge issue that you mentioned earlier is
Really?
becoming more and more common, especially after Colin Kaepernick, would kneel for the national anthem in front of the NFL, and he had that wide audience. Now more and more students are becoming aware of their right, that they don't have to stand for the pledge, and whatever their reason is. Maybe they believe as well it is basically a prayer of allegiance. Maybe they understand the racism behind the national anthem and the pledge. So more and more students are having the same experience, and not all of them are actually getting this publicity that we saw from the latest one. And a lot of times, children are having to teach their teachers the law, and that's very unfortunate. The teachers need to know this. I encourage everyone, if you have children, reach out to your principals, reach out to the superintendents of the schools to make sure that they understand the children's rights. And if you don't want your child to have to stand for the pledge, it's also a good idea to inform the teacher of that and let them know, so you can hit the issue before it becomes more of an issue and you don't end up on the news, unfortunately. If anyone's having these problems, there are numerous organizations you can contact. We are one. Another one, of course, as you know, is Freedom from Religion, which is a nationwide organization based out of Wisconsin, but they do work in Florida as well. We talked a lot today about these bills. Everyone should reach out to your legislator, reach out to your representatives, tell them how you feel about these bills. Otherwise, they'll never know. They will think that these bills are fine. So I encourage everyone, learn how you can reach out to your representative. It's very easy online to look up their phone number, their email, and go from there. I really encourage everyone to take, the 10 minutes it takes to do that. I think it makes all the difference.
And the main headquarters of the ACLU Florida is in Miami, isn't it still?
Yes, it's in Miami. That's where our main office is. We have other locations. So Tampa is our next largest one. Then we also have a location in Jacksonville and Pensacola. We have presence in Orlando area, Sarasota, and Tallahassee, of course.
And every other state or most states?
So every state has an affiliate, and we also are in Puerto Rico. California has multiple affiliates, and we have national offices throughout the country, mostly in New York and DC.
Well, we know you're going to be busy. You better start staffing up, or I think the term is lawyering up.
That's right.
Because based on what we're seeing in the legislature, we're all going to be busy. But anyway, that's all the time we have for this week. And we really want to thank you, Jackie Azis, who is the staff attorney for the ACLU in this area, for being with us here today on the Atheist Forum. So we'll be back next Tuesday. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your parole officer. Sorry, next Friday. Along with Jim Peterson and Judy Adkins, I'm Ed Golly reminding you, if the story seems a little too implausible to be true, don't believe it just because somebody wrote it down.
Make them prove it.
Atheist Forum. To learn more about Atheists of Florida, visit our website at atheistofflorida.com. Continue the discussion on our website, talk.aof.ngo. And join us again next Friday for another edition of the Atheist Forum here on Tan Talk 1340.
WTAM, Clearwater,
FM 106.1,
WDCF, Dade City, Tampa Bay, WZHR, Zephyr Hills,
FM 104.3.
Listen.
R. Kelly indicted. Robert Kraft charged. I'm Mike Moss. The R&B singer R. Kelly has been indicted in Cook County, Illinois, on 10 counts of aggravated sexual abuse involving multiple victims. Correspondent Sarah Seidner's in Chicago.
There has been an indictment filed on Robert Sylvester Kelly, also known, of course, worldwide as the R&B singer R. Kelly. We first reported about the grand jury that had convened. We understand that grand jury actually convened last week. It also convened this week, and that some of this has to do with the women that have come forward